Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This webinar will be recorded, and we will email you all a link after the session. So don't worry if you're taking notes or you're concerned you're going to miss something, you will be able to watch this again. My name is Shelby Holland. I'm a proud Arts and Sciences alum, class of 2018. I started my career in finance, working at Morgan Stanley before pivoting to entertainment. I now live in LA. I've worked at Netflix and the Sundance Film Festival and started a podcast with my sister called Sisters Who Watch, the entertainment review podcast. And she's also joining us today. Before we officially kick off our program, I'd like to share a few housekeeping items for all of you. Today's program is co-sponsored by Cornell Alumni Career Programs and Cornell Young Alumni Programs. For those of you interested in asking questions, there is a Q&A function in the Zoom webinar. You just hover over the Q&A section and that icon at the left portion of your screen. You can also use the chat feature throughout the session to share any comments or things that you've learned in your career journey that you want to share with all of us. And we have a dedicated Q&A session at the end of the webinar, so we'll do our best to answer all of your questions in the time that we have. Now I'd like to turn it over to my sister and podcast co-host, Laura, to introduce herself and today's keynote speaker.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Shelby, for that great introduction. My name is Laura Holland. I graduated from Cornell in May 2022 with a major in industrial and labor relations. And right after graduation, I moved to San Francisco to work at Google as a legal policy specialist, where I investigated trademark violations found on Google Ads. And then about 7 months, I was laid off from my job very unexpectedly. And then after a few months of travel and fun, I was able to land a new job. And now I work as a paralegal specialist at the Department of Justice, still based in San Francisco. So that's what I'm up to now. And now I will introduce our very esteemed guest, Sarah Roccasano, and I will read her bio. Some could argue Sarah was top of her game with the 20-plus years of renewable energy and finance career she built for herself in New York City after graduating from Cornell, including her time on Wall Street and investment banking and private equity for over a decade, and as an early entrant into the field of renewable energy. In doing so, Sarah closed over $12 billion of projects, deals, and advisory mandates across the renewable energy spectrum and in energy and infrastructure. However, during her tenure, Sarah lost her job several times, some for extended periods of time, forcing her to navigate the landscape and trying to find herself in a new opportunity. In 2022, she decided to actively walk away from her career and life she knew in New York City and has transformed herself into an international public speaker, travel storyteller, and author with the first of her trilogy of travel adventure memoirs set to be released in 2024. She is the founder of the award-winning travel inspiration company, Embolden Adventures. All right, Sarah, I'm going to toss it off to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, ladies. Laura and Shelby, hello. I want to thank you guys for moderating our discussion today, and thank you for having me. Thank you, Allison Biersdorf, for today's control room operations. Lastly, to Ilana Dimbleby and Nicole Svanovic for coming up with this great idea and for inviting us to speak with you all today, our Cornell community. Yeah, let's go Big Red. So who am I? And why do I believe I can help you today? So as Laura wonderfully introduced me, my name is Sarah Roccasano, and as she mentioned, I'm an international public speaker, travel storyteller, author, and most importantly, a Cornell graduate, undergraduate class of 2002. That's over 20 years ago now. And while I was at Cornell and my undergraduate focus, I obtained my degree in operations research and in industrial engineering, and I had concentrations in entrepreneurship and in economics. But why am I speaking to you today about layoffs? But this is a good question because I've lost my job, as Laura mentioned, several times. And this is who I was before I transformed into what I'm doing today. As she mentioned, I've worked over 20 years on Wall Street. I was in private equity, investment banking, you name it, government, consulting, and in industry. And in that time, it wasn't smooth sailing for me because I had been let go 3 times in my career. That means I've been in job search mode for a combined total of 41 months of being out of work. That's a total of 3.5 years over a 7-year period of job loss. And in that time, one time I was out of work for 2.5 years straight. So this was a very rough period for me. So I've been there and I've done that. And I'm happy to offer my help to you of what I learned in this experience. And my takeaway for today's discussion is not to offer specific data on the job market or give you any sort of insider tips from hiring managers. My takeaway is to inspire confidence in you by providing the best motivational pep talk I can muster. All the while, I want to provide you with some networking tools that helped me land my jobs and what skills I developed in that time when I was in this long period of job search mode. And what I hope you can take away from this experience, next slide, please, thank you. First and foremost is that you will land. It will happen, you will succeed. However, it's not going to happen on your timeline. Let me prepare you for this. The process will take longer than you think. And perhaps it will unfold not in the way you expect it to. So I would like for you to be open to whatever may come your way because you're going to be very surprised how it all shakes out. The people you meet along the way, the type of job you end up getting, you will not anticipate what's going to happen. Secondly, keep in mind that change is the only constant in life. Embrace that change is going to happen. It's inevitable. Learn to be comfortable through that change, which means trust the process of how it all flows. In this time, most likely, you're going to build critical life skills, resiliency, strength, courage, humility, hope, sense of self. And unfortunately, here's another thing. You're going to be rejected along the way, but that's okay because the power of rejection is powerful. It offers you the chance to take a hard look at what you truly want in your life. And it builds your self-advocacy muscles when you get back on that horse to fight again. I hope this experience could be one of the best times of your life, like it was for me. So, Laura, Shelby, do you want to talk about where I see how we sense a possible layoff ahead?
Yes. Thank you, Sarah, for kicking us off. It's such a wonderful start to the presentation. Would love to hear your perspective on like sensing a possible layoff ahead. I know from like our experiences, Laura and I were both shocked when it happened to us. I can talk for myself. I found out I was getting laid off on vacation. So complete blindside, did not see it coming. Grateful I had friends that were able to pack up my things at work for me, and I was able to have connections with people afterwards as I was updating my resume, getting recommendations for next opportunities. But I did not see it coming. What about you, Laura?
Yeah, similarly, I was a part of a mass layoff of 12,000 people at Google. Very unexpected. I think, especially working in the tech industry, as most of you know, it's very unstable right now. Lots of layoffs have been happening in the Bay Area where I'm located. So we all knew that it could happen, but we didn't think it would happen to us, of course. So just one morning, I went to go start working, open my laptop, and my laptop was shut down. And I was locked out of all my work accounts. So it was very unexpected, very shocking. But like Shelby said, I had great coworkers who packed up all my things for me. And I had a lot of friends at the company who, I could talk through the experience with. So very shocking, but there was a sense that layoffs may be coming because working in tech. Yeah, Sarah, tell us a bit more about, what it's like sensing a possible layoff.
Right. So you're mentioning interesting industries that now seem to be very kind of unstable, right? And if you
Mhm.
can kind of read the tea leaves, maybe you're thinking a year ahead it's coming, or even like a few days, always kind of plan thinking that something could potentially go wrong, and the fact that they're going to be lifting the rug from under your feet. So I wanted to talk a bit about some of these kind of things to keep in mind as you lead towards potentially a layoff happening. And those are housekeeping items, financial prepping, evaluating your goals, and mindset practice. So in this case, housekeeping. Don't panic if you feel something's going to happen. I think it's important to take control of your situation where you can. So in this case, at your job still, you want to maybe wrap up any sort of open ends. Maybe start thinking about printing out your performance reviews. You want to maybe start thinking about how to cash out some benefits you may have, any sort of points or gift cards you have. I think it's important you review your corporate benefits book or your employee manual to see kind of what surprises may be coming or what you're, entitled to potentially. Start bringing home personal stuff, you know, take some things home little by little. Also start to build your extracurricular activities to round out your resume. Start getting your resume brushed up. Update your LinkedIn profile and start reviewing your network and your contact list. One of my wise friend, my old coworker too, continues to remind me that your network is your net worth. As for financial prepping, start thinking about, in my case, I started thinking a while ago, I started writing myself a rent check every time I wrote my landlady a rent check. So start thinking about, brushing up on your financial situation, review your bills, money in, money out, think about ways you want to start cutting costs. This is important. You may want to think about maxing your 401k. If your employer is going to be matching your 401k, start thinking about maybe getting ahead of the curve and max it out before, you think the day is coming. Make any sort of available liquid investments you have, additional savings boosts that are easily tappable, considering starting a side hustle. And you know what? Things that might be smart is start obtaining maybe some certificates or education. In my case, I got my MBA on my employer's dollar. You can't take an MBA away from somebody. So I wanted to boost that up too in terms of my capabilities and my credibility. And go to the doctor. If you're going to lose your health care, maybe try to get to the doctor beforehand, and that's going to help, leverage those resources and benefits that you have. But I think these are the other two most important things you want to start getting ahead of, is figuring out by evaluating your goals what it is you really want in your life. And my guidance counselor in high school told me this one time. She says, if you win the lotto, if you're independently wealthy, what would you really do with your life? Start thinking big picture. What's next for you in your chapter here? Challenge that status quo. Is there a career shift? I think we heard a lot of questions ahead of time thinking, how am I going to shift careers? How am I going to shift industries? This might be a nice little nudge from the universe to say, okay, here's your chance to really take a hard look at, is this something you really want to give a shot to do? And maybe like me, go the entrepreneur route. This could be an opportunity for you to really embrace being your own business owner. But lastly, most importantly, I think is a mindset practice, because trust me, when I was in my 2.5 year period of layoffs, that was, I call it my period of darkness. It was very hard. There's lots of ups and downs in this time frame. So for me, mindset practice is going to be very critical when it's go time, when you really need to rely on, trusting. And in my case, I have a mindset coach. His name is Gordon Melville, and I've been practicing a few mantras he's been giving me, like, I'm a magnet. What I put out there is what I get back, or I can make that happen, or I trust that things are going to work out for me. So sort of ideas to kind of get into the practice of meditation, yoga, general health, getting your health in order, traveling, relaxing, smiling, even welcoming a test of faith. Maybe there's some holes that you want to plug in to, kind of really see where I can rely on, trusting that things are going to work for me, not against me. And I want to encourage curiosity and to find your confidence. But lastly, this is most important. As I mentioned, this experience could be hard. It could pose a challenge, but I believe in you, and you need to believe in you too. So next slide, please. Next 2 slides, please. I want to take you to the moment of being laid off. I call it the pink slip moment. And when that happens, I want you to stay strong and stay composed and stay grounded when this happens. I want you to, when the moment comes, you're going to get a phone call potentially on your, your phone, you're going to see maybe HR calling. In my case, it was the HR conference room. And so here it comes. Here's the moment, okay? And when I worked in finance, you don't stay around when you get the notice that you're getting laid off. So prepare that security is going to escort you out the door. That is something that's hard to kind of deal with. It's embarrassing. It really hurts your ego. You feel like you maybe have done something wrong. It looks bad potentially, but prepare that that could very well be the case, that, you're in one moment, you're out the next, literally. But keep your head up when that happens. And here's another trick. This is what I did. I knew it was coming, so I brought my tote bag and I put my stuff from my desk and I brought it to the meeting. And I basically said, all right, if you're not going to let me go back to my desk, at least I have some of my stuff, because I learned the last time that someone packed my desk and all my stuff broke when they finally shipped it back to me. So I'm not going to let that happen again. So come with confidence, come with a sense of humor. I got my crap. Let's go. But one thing I want to kind of talk to you about here is they're going to show you a severance letter potentially on the spot. Don't sign it. Read it over carefully, understand what the terms are, review it with trusted sources, and there's possibly you want to have a counter proposal to that, but talk to your lawyer if you think you need to. But know overall, as this is happening, you're going to be okay and you're going to land. So take the moment in and hold your head up high. So day 0, this just happened. What are you going to do? I think you need to give yourself time to rest, recharge yourself, and reevaluate what's going on. Don't do anything. Just take some self-care practices, go out for a walk, take some time to yourself, meditate. Remember we talked about some of those mindset practices. I also want you to think about cleansing any sort of built up stresses or toxicities that you may have been building up, maybe in a stressful job situation, for instance, pressure, whatever was happening for you. Make sure you ground yourself. Go out to a walk in the forest, go to the ocean, find ways to kind of get yourself rebalanced and maybe kind of purge out what wasn't working for you. And remember this, again, I want to just emphasize this again. This is going to work for you. I met some amazing people on my job search journey. I took control of my life. I traveled the world. I think you should consider that maybe as an option now that you have some free time and you're owning your time now to direct the way you want to see your life going next. So that being said, once you've recollected yourself, this is now day 1 of your job search process. So get yourself ready to launch. These are the housekeeping items. These are the mindset practices. These are the financial goals. These are, all these great things that we just talked about as you anticipate this happening. Now it's time to put it into practice because you prepared yourself for this moment. Take personal reflection on what you want. Take your spiritual inventory. See where your hope is low, and set up your mindset practices and start implementing them. One thing I want to say is we got a lot of questions ahead of time before this great presentation today. And a lot of where I read these questions, I really sensed fear, anxiety, worry, uncertainty, concern. And I want to, as from my personal experience, give you hope, because I want to say, don't project what the world thinks of you. I'm to this, I'm not enough of that, I'm not qualified here, I don't have it, I can't do it, right? Whatever it is that you think the world is saying and projecting, it's not true. What you're going to do is you're going to own the fact that you're in job search mode now. That's it. I own it. I am who I am. I am experienced. I'm awesome. I'm a Cornell grad. I provide value. I'm a winner, and I got this. Okay, so you turn that projection, that kind of, worry upside down, and you channel it to get what you want. Don't let the world push you around. You tell the world how you are, right? I put myself out there and I receive back, okay? So that translates into you landing a job, I think, more successfully. So that optimism and that self-love, because this work is critical. I can tell you this personally because I was in that period of darkness between 2015 and the mid 2017. Some of the things I did in that time frame is I listened to motivational voices, Gary Vaynerchuk, James Altucher, who's a Cornell grad, and my favorite, Mel Robbins. So, if you hear other people's perspectives about positivity and self-worth and getting this and knowing you got this, I think that's really going to help translate in the right direction. So also too, in this time frame, take time to be creative for yourself, because creativity is something that really kind of boosts your morale, your excitability, your confidence. Rick Rubin talks a lot about this in his podcast lately. Just be a creative vessel and let things flow for you. And in this case, in my kind of dark moments, is when I birth my company, Embolden Adventures, my travel inspiration site. So there's opportunity to get through this. So now that you've kind of set yourself up for success, from a mindset perspective and a confidence perspective, I want you to set yourself up for success when it comes to now networking, because this is important. Getting a job requires talking to people. It requires getting yourself out there. It requires you to go to work, look for work. You're basically going to put yourself in a situation of looking for work. You need to get out there and you need to talk to anybody and everybody who you think can open a door for you. Okay? It's not just sending a resume and hoping for the best, because some of these job postings, as you know, are getting like 500, 600, 700 resumes at a time. It's not going to work. What you're going to do is you're going to get the job before the job is posted. You're going to start to meet people who are thinking about maybe creating a job, and then they have you in mind potentially to have them fill the job. So this is why networking is important. And this is also important when we start switching careers, because when we start getting out there, we start kind of surveying the landscape, we start getting our confidence muscles, built. This is how we then can convey that this is a direction I want to go. So in this case, you're essentially going on informational interviews. You're not going on real interviews, you're going on informational interviews. And you're going to have accountability partners, you're going to have coaches, and you're going to surround yourself with people who are also kind of in job search mode, so you can help one another and share. So get out of the house, get yourself to work in terms of looking for work. And in doing so, you want to set your per week goals, numbers of meetings you want booked, numbers of resumes you want sent, numbers of recruiters you want to reach out to, number of new contacts you want to make. And lastly, in this time frame of setting your plan in place, you want to organize and develop your job search content to get yourself ready. So remember, you are the director of your job search process now, and you honor your approach of how you want to go about this. And so I have some job search content examples I'd like to go through more specifically with you, Laura and Shelby. So these are your marketing plan or your top 10 companies, different resume versions, job search schedule template, and a job SWOT analysis. Because remember, preparation prepares for success.
Sarah, you mentioned a marketing plan. What does that look like? Can you tell us more about what that entails?
Of course. So next slide, please. I provided an example of my marketing plan with top 10 companies. So what this is a two-pager. You could kind of print it on one side and then have the top 10 companies on the other side. This is something you want to think about having when you meet with your informational interviews that you conduct, because essentially you're asking people to advocate on your behalf. So what this is a quick plan that shows people who you are, where your interests are, and where you see opportunity, and what value you could provide, including your contact information. So it's a great tool to have to point to when you're in, let's say, having a coffee with somebody, and they say, okay, so tell me about yourself. What are you looking for? What can I do to help? You say, okay, great. Here's my plan. This is who I am. This is where I think challenges are in terms of industry. This is where I think I could provide value. And this is some of my experience in a nutshell. I, closed $12 billion of deals. I, worked in the renewable space. I know a lot about solar and the solar industry. This is kind of where I want to see myself kind of growing into. So now you're providing some context for somebody to understand kind of what you're looking for and how they can help you. And then when you turn the page over, you have your top 10 companies. You're like, I really want to get in the door of Google. I really want to get in the door of, I don't know, a nonprofit. And then that's going to spark a aha in them, because they're going to be like, oh, yeah, I can be helpful. my neighbor next door works at Google. Not, I think he works in this department. You know what? This makes sense. I think I can make an introduction on your behalf. And that's what a marketing plan is doing. It's helping you hone in what it is you want and how you're going to ask for help from others.
That's so helpful. And something like I personally hadn't thought about when I was doing my job search. So good to know now, and definitely something I think we should all be using moving forward.
That's great. And that marketing plan that I did then turned into a creative resume that I put together. So if you want to go to the next slide, I provided an example of my creative resume that I put together. And what this is this is kind of a better uploaded version of that marketing plan. You know, it shows that I'm in the renewable space. It shows my contact information. It shows kind of, quickly where I provide value, where I'm excited about working in this space, some of my accolades. And then the next page is kind of more my resume condensed so people can see. It doesn't really say where I worked, it just says what I've done and where I want to go. And then finally, here's another thing to kind of keep in mind in terms of like your creativity. I started writing articles on LinkedIn about my opinions about the renewable space. And so this I intended to be a soft copy, a PDF that I could electronically send. So I would have hyperlinks to those LinkedIn articles that people could read up on and learn more. All the while, I had my still traditional resume that I then, stapled on with this PDF that I could potentially send to others who asked for more information. Um, I would advise you to go work with Cornell Career Services to get more information on, what specifically should be on your resume. I do know that your LinkedIn profile hyperlink works and is important to have on your resume. I do know, kind of a condensed, easy to read, resume that really wants to underscore what it is you're looking for in a creative way is important too. And a few other things I provided here as examples. These are my actual templates. So I created a job search template. This was in Excel. You could do it on Google Docs, whatever it is. But for me, when I continued on with this job search, I needed to be very organized. What kind of name, who I met, email addresses, what companies they were working at, what recruiters I met, who introduced who to me, when I'm going to meet them, where did I meet them, did I send a resume or not? So it's up to you how you want to kind of structure your job search template. But for me, it was a weekly log of kind of the activity goals that I had for myself and did I meet them, a list of names to contact, a list of companies I continue to want to hear about, because as you continue to evolve these conversations, you start to get ideas. Oh, wait, I never thought about that company. Maybe I should update my top 10 list. Or, this company's not going to work for me. I actually heard a lot about it and actually don't want to try my luck in getting in the door there. So this is an ongoing template that you'll continue to, update and, use for your advantage. And one last thing, I know, Shelby, you and I talked about this a little bit. This is important, and I want you to think about this because as you continue to have these informational interviews, you're going to start to get an idea of how you're going to position yourself to make a decision on which job is going to be right for you. So there's a job SWOT template that I've set up, and what that is as you know, some of us business people know what SWOT is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Very simple template of like the coordinates that you want to put into. And so for me, as I got closer to narrowing down a potential job for me, there were some final interviews I was getting that I needed to then think, how am I going to make a decision if I do get an offer? So what I did here for this SWOT template is I set up, this is the investment banker in me. I set up the job descriptions of where these various roles were. I started to learn more and more as I interviewed, where the company is, these are great talking points, to use when it's in an interview time. Like, oh, I remember this company's really good in this space, blah, blah, blah. I did my research. It's in my job search template, or my job SWOT template. So here I am putting it all together, kind of analyzing all three together, seeing which is the right fit for me, what feels right, why is this company strong? And then if you move forward, you then start to analyze the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats side by side. Why this role may be a better fit for me for these reasons. Because as you continue to, cultivate this template, then you start to see, okay, I feel more empowered to make this decision versus this decision. It's an ongoing, you're leading yourself to that conclusion more easily with more confidence. So after you you get those templates set up we talked about, right? Your resumes you're building, your jobs templates, and the like. Now it's time to put it into action, right? So as I mentioned, you want to get the job before that job's posted. This is very important to know this, okay? And by doing so, you want to talk to everybody and anybody, okay? Most times people feel uncomfortable when you ask them directly for a job, but they do find it good and they're happy to provide any sort of advice or any sort of help or lead you down the right direction. And the more and more you get out there in terms of networking, the more you start to meet the super networkers. Some people are like, I know 5 people I could put you in touch with. I know 7 people. I've been in your situation. I can totally help you. You won't know until you have these conversations. And then that's the real win, because 1 or 2 or 3 degree separations is ultimately how you get that job offer. It's someone who knew someone who knew somebody. And so you're finding your little journeys here and there, by discovering who can put you in the right position to talk to the right people. And by going over and over this, who I am, what I want, this is who I am, this is where I see myself, providing value, you now are preparing yourself to really win that interview, because you're just in there going, I'm confident, this is what I want, this is who I am, take it or leave it. Right? Because you've been preparing by these informational interviews. So, and you'll start to find that, maybe this is a different direction I want to go, or maybe this is something that is more interesting to me. You won't know until you go through this journey. There's also a few other creative things to keep in mind, conferences, forums, get on TikTok, go at speaking events, maybe get on stage yourself, go write on LinkedIn, like I mentioned. There's so many different ways to really start to put yourself out there, to feel confident, and for people to start to see you and say, okay, this is interesting. So remember, you want to build that confidence, and you're building those soft skills for yourself. And there's a few more things I want to have you kind of keep in mind as we come to a conclusion. I call them my fine 9 to keep in mind. So there's a bunch that I learned in this process, because, when I was in job search mode and I got my job in 2013. So we're talking like about 10, 11 years ago now. I was so excited I think I was out of work for about 11 months at this point. I was so excited to finally land a job that I wanted to give back. And I wrote this long email. It was like 20, things, 20 takeaways. So the fine 9 is really kind of a more condensed version of these 20 takeaways. But I find it very interesting now. I would never have thought in 2013 I'd be here now talking to our beautiful Cornell community to share what I got to learn. And hopefully this could help others. This is so cool how the world is unfolding in a very way that I didn't expect. So thank you again for being an audience here, and I hope this is helping. So the fine 9, I just want to quickly summarize. It's very important to be organized. You're going to be your own personal assistant in this networking process. So what I mean by that is you have to be on top of your schedule. You want to make sure you send iCalendars out to people with the location of where you're meeting, your time, your phone numbers, information, so people know. You want to confirm a day before you're going to meet with them. You want to select places that are convenient for them, and you want to allow sufficient time before meetings. So if you're on top of your schedule and you're not disorganized, this is going to work for you, because you're going to come in confident, you're going to come in without like being frazzled, and you're going to have a really effective conversation with this person. Remember their name before you shake their hand, and make sure you read up on the company when you're about to talk with them. And don't forget your marketing plan. Have it printed out and ready to hand to them. And lastly, be sure to thank them after you had this informational interview with them. Other things to keep in mind is to be positive. Again, this is going to be a hard time. Rejection happens, things don't go your way. What you put out there is what you get back. Continue to hold your mantras strong. Positive thoughts yield positive results, which is my mana magic from Hawaii. And, speak power to your future. Remember, I own it. I am who I am. I got this. And then be confident, right? If not you, then who better? Own it. Believe it's you. Make it you. You're going to do it. You're going to advocate for yourself, and your confidence is going to shine in those interviews. And then continuing onward, you want to be balanced. You want to be interesting, and you want to be patient. Okay? Patience is so important, because as I mentioned, this process is going to go on its timeline, not yours. You can't force things. You can't just assume it's going to be this way. It's going to unfold naturally. And so patience is critical. And back to the interesting part, if you're doing things that you love, you're doing things that are joyous, you're doing things that are finding, your own interest, it shines in interviews. Like, for instance, as I mentioned, I travel the world. In my resume, I have activities. I wrote swimming with great white sharks in Australia. And someone picked up on that and said, what is this? And I said, well, when I was in between jobs, I went traveling to 7 different countries, including Australia, and I wanted to go in a Shark Tank. I went in the cage in Australia, and it's eco-friendly because they use rock music. And he's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, yeah, instead of chumming the waters, they realize that sharks listen to frequencies that are like, akin to AC/DC music. So we're sitting in the cold water with speakers listening to AC/DC, and here come the great whites. So there you go. That person remembered that conversation, or thinks about how the interview went, and said, oh, she's kind of interesting. Let's maybe talk to her again. So I encourage you to do what makes you happy. And in doing so, the last kind of the fine nine, I want you to be courageous. Sometimes it's okay to say no to a job offer, and you're going to hit emotional lows, and you got to trust you're going to get through it. So courage is going to matter when, times get tough. Lastly, I want you to be gracious and giving, because your genuineness, your kindness, it does really matter. Because I remember when I was a hiring manager and people didn't thank me for an interview, I still said, well, they don't really want the job. They actually didn't even take the time to thank me. But that's an indicator. So if you really care, you're really genuine, show it. Express your gratitude and cheerlead for others. You're going through this process, others are going through this process. If you keep one another, motivated and happy and encouraged, the career gods are going to be happy and karma is going to reward you. So now, congratulations. You did all great in terms of your job search. You tried your best, you showed up, and now you got a job offer. This is awesome. You've accepted it. This is when you make it official, when you accept it and you get your email address, because sometimes things don't work out and last minute, and then your job fell through. So be sure that this is certain before you start making LinkedIn posts and any sort of announcements. I do want to encourage the idea to start to thank your future members of your team when you accept a job offer. Go ahead and say, hey, I'm excited to start working with you next week. This is my start date. Really excited. I accepted the offer. Thank you again for interviewing me. I can't wait to get started on whatever we talked about, this project, this opportunity, you know it, you name it. So be sure to get out there and thank your future team members and your future manager. Also, as you've been in this informational kind of networking that you've been doing, you've now built a really powerful network for yourself. Remember, your network is your net worth. So it's very important on a one-to-one basis, not a blast email, to let your network that you just built, let them know you got a job. One-on-one emails. Hey, Sandy, I got a job. Thank you again for helping me. It was so cool to meet you. I really enjoyed the time that, you helped introduce this person to me. I just want to let you know, this is my new role. Thank you again. Because that's really going to translate, maybe if you lose your job again. Hi, Sandy, we did I lost my job. Can we have a conversation? You always want to keep those, personal touches warm and ongoing connections that you have, whether it's holiday cards or, just reaching out randomly and saying hello. It's going to matter. And then lastly, I want you to honor yourself for getting a job well done, because this was a difficult experience and you got through it. And now you're out the gauntlet and you got a new opportunity that's actually going to be working for you. So way to go. Congratulations. And I mentioned, you never know where you're going to go. So as I said, when I was in that job loss period for 2.5 years is when I started my travel inspiration company, Bolden Adventures. And getting myself out there, putting myself out there, doing these sort of informational interviews has led me to build the skill set to be an international public speaker. I literally put myself on stage last year without any practice. And I look back, it's because I talked to everybody and anybody I could, and I was confident. Eventually, I built that confidence muscle. And that job search experience also helped me to build my spiritual practices and my world travel adventures. I made a point of going to see the world when I did have some downtime. And as I mentioned with you today, my 2013 learnings of being in job search mode is what this presentation has been built on today. So I thank you. And I want you to remember that first and foremost, you're gonna land. You're going to be able to navigate this landscape. It's going to take longer than you think, but I want you to trust the process because here is a great gift of growth for you. Thank you very much. Go Big Red.
Sarah, that was so amazing. Thank you so much for that
You're welcome.
helpful presentation, so informative. Like you said, such a full circle moment. You went through what you did a decade plus ago, so you could be here today to inspire and encourage us all. So important. And thank you also to everyone in the chat who's been sharing advice and thoughts. It's also helpful to read and hear how everyone is encouraged and sharing tips. So now we're going to move into our Q&A. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions in advance and to those who have been submitting questions as we've been discussing in the chat and using the Q&A function. So Sarah, there were a few questions around like income during your job search and if you had a family and a lot of responsibilities and how it might be hard to take time off. Can you give insight on like how you handled like income during your job search, whether it was temporary or part-time or savings that you lived off of?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a personal question, right? Everyone's different. Everyone has their own responsibilities and difficulties and challenges and stresses. That's definitely something that should not be, taken lightly. But as I mentioned, for me, I just kept giving, savings is critical. You're gonna potentially get severance. That's something that maybe companies will reward you with. So that's good news. You'll definitely have that. You'll have some potential unemployment, but it might not be easy to rely on, especially if you have a family. Yeah, it can get gnarly. This is why it's so important to have faith and have that mindset that things are going to work themselves out. I truly believe that things will find a way to you eventually, and you kind of need the lows and the highs, and it's all kind of ups and downs always. It's going to be volatile. In that 2.5 year period of job search mode, I was down to my last, mortgage payment in my savings. So I luckily landed a job miraculously. But I did hold down that apartment, by myself as the sole breadwinner for 2.5 years. So it's partly because I had some severance and I had some savings, but it did get down to the wire, full transparency. But I will say that, things will find a way to you. You're not going to be in dire straits. And you have to think about how to reduce costs. If it means you got to move, and you got to move. I know my family, we had situations when I was growing up too. And, it gives you more gratitude. That's the other thing. If you're not ever in this situation, you're going to learn what it looks like and you're going to be more grateful when you get out of it. But we all go through our ups and downs. There's always going to be a hard time. I highly encourage why you got to get into this mindset now to think about it. God forbid something was to go wrong. What would I do in this situation? That's why I want to kind of put it out there. Don't be surprised. This can happen. And lately it has been happening more and more.
Thank you for sharing. And I completely agree. I think the era we're in, no job is safe. So we do all need to be prepared. I'm grateful that I did get severance. And when I was in my first job, I was very focused on savings. So I did have, a nest egg that I was able to focus on. And what you also said resonated with me, how things and opportunities will come. I do believe if you are like positive and believing and hopeful, opportunities will come. And I remember my severance, I was running low, and a former employee that I worked with reached out to me about helping him create a business plan. And so I had a consulting opportunity. And so I've been doing consulting over the last few months to like supplement my income. And that was a blessing in disguise. So definitely keep the faith and opportunities will come as you're in this, challenging time.
Yeah, and I can also add on to this. So I'm living in San Francisco, which is a very expensive city, of course. And when I was laid off unexpectedly, I got severance, which was wonderful. And I used some of that to travel like Sarah did. And that was an incredible opportunity. But then you come back and you're like, what do I do? Right? I have rent and I have utilities and groceries. So I really had to start like cooking a lot more. Like at my old job, I got breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the office. Like this was a real thing. I was like, what am I going to do for food? So I had to like cook and really grocery shop and budget every month. And also, I started dog walking in San Francisco. There's lots of dogs here. So just easy side hustle things. Just a couple extra $100 a week makes a huge difference. So I started doing that. So those are things that anyone can do. Anyone can dog walk. So that was an important, helpful way to supplement my income living in an expensive city.
Great advice, Laura. Whatever you got to do to supplement that income.
Yes, yes. We have another question here. And make sure, yeah, keep submitting questions in our Q&A. So for both of you, what are the keys to turning your passion in a profitable career? As you talked about, when you're unemployed, could be a really great time to pivot and pursue a passion, but how do you make that profitable?
It's a great question. This is the world of entrepreneurship at this point. And I mean, we could probably have another 2-hour presentation on what it's like to be an entrepreneur. Um, well, I think for me, I'm leveraging all the skills I basically learned in my 20-year career, working for institutions, working, in various capacities to raise capital and to analyze projects. And that now is translating to work for me, for myself. So I think your experience prepares you. It's not like you're starting from a clean slate. And I think what matters more is that you're excited to come to work in the morning, or you're going to be working longer hours because you actually want to do this job. This is fun. This is my passion. And, I think that if you start to I always think about it as like you're in a rainforest and you're walking through this thicket and you don't have the path. You just take your machete and you start cutting through the forest, right? That's what kind of taking that step is taking a kind of a step into the unknown. That's entrepreneurial. That's the entrepreneurial world. You're relying on your abilities, your skill set, and your passion and your vision. And I always believe that, the universe doesn't like void. So if you clear a path, things are going to start filling in. And in my case, like I said, I decided I want to be a public speaker. And now look what we're doing. We're talking to Cornell. I didn't expect this a year and a half ago, right? So if you just put yourself out there, take chances, take a risk, things are going to start unfolding for you. Remember, I'm a magnet. What I attract is what, comes to me. So I think that as an engineer, as an analytical person for so long, it was always like a prescribed, it has to be this way. This is the plan. This is how I risk mitigate, this is how I'm going to get the investment community to believe that these projected, cash flows down the line are really going to be the reason why this company is going to succeed. It's all just something to risk mitigate. The reality is you don't know. And there's no game plan. And so if you figure it out and let it unfold, you might prove a new pathway that no one saw or no one developed. And now you got 10 steps ahead of that kind of next competitor, right? To then say, I figured it out. I got that step ahead. I now have this space, right? So that's kind of how I think about it. It's about letting it unfold and letting your passion really kind of lead the way. And believing in yourself that you can figure this out.
I completely agree with you, Sarah. As I think about my career, I've always been trying to get closer and closer to the passion. I've always been really interested in entertainment and storytelling. So even though I was started my career in finance at Morgan Stanley, I knew I wanted to pivot industries. So it was like networking with people in media and entertainment, volunteering at film festivals, like finding ways to get closer to my passion. And then getting jobs at like Netflix and then Sundance, I keep getting closer. So I encourage you all to figure out like what you're passionate about and try and find jobs and opportunities to get you closer and closer to that passion and interest. And I'm still on the journey. We're on the way, but I love that with every opportunity, I'm getting closer to what I care about.
I agree. One of my favorite quotes is by Rumi. When you start to walk the path, the way appears.
Love it.
And also make your own opportunities, right? Shelby and I was unemployed at Extra Time. We had been talking about making a podcast for months before both of us were laid off. And then I said, okay, I have the time, right? Take the layoff to really do something that you've been meaning to do. So we made our own opportunities, start a podcast together, Sisters Who Watch, and it's been so wonderful. And I know Shelby, during interviews, people have been, oh, like this shows entrepreneurship and a creative mindset that you start your own business about the entertainment industry, something you're really passionate about. So you can make a side hustle that, shows your passion, and that could lead into something that's profitable. Yeah.
Completely agree. Another question that we just got live mentions how length of search when you're looking for a job can be connected to like your age or race. Curious, like for everyone's POV, and like how do you persist if you run into like real ageism and like racism bias in your search process? It's a big one.
Well, I think it's hard to tell, right? We don't know what the world's thinking. I mean, maybe there are some examples of this, absolutely. But again, it's owning it, right? This is who I am. This is what I bring to the table. I'm going to show up and I'm going to be confident in myself. And I truly believe that trumps anything. Where's the value I provide? What is it I want to do? What path do I want to create for myself? I really want to hesitate to like think that I have limiting beliefs here, that I'm going to just find my way. If it's not going to be that way, then too bad. It's not going to work. I'm going to find a different way then. And that's why America is a great country, right? We have opportunity to kind of figure things out for ourselves.
Yeah, I definitely agree that mindset's really important. So like being positive, but also understanding that there can be external factors that, can impact your search. And so being mindful of that. And also I've realized if I don't feel comfortable in an interview or like at a work environment, I don't want to work there anyway. Like you
Right.
want to make sure it's a choice between you and the company. So you have agency in the places you want to work. And so definitely keep that in mind. Like I know through my search, I want to be somewhere where I align with the culture and it's mission driven and there's like a greater purpose. And so if I feel like there's any bias in like the hiring or the company, that's not a place I'd want to be. Okay. Another question, Sarah, this is specifically about the marketing plan. What did you use to create that? Was it Canva or PowerPoint? Can you share how you created that and in general, like your template?
Right. So that's from 2013, a long time ago. So that was PowerPoint. But yeah, Canva is a great resource. This is what presentation I created today that you saw was on Canva. So, Canva and other sort of, free resources have a lot of predetermined templates that you can use that are, very creative, very eye-catching. So yeah, I would recommend Canva. And if you have more creative chops, PowerPoint.
Awesome. I love that Canva is being used so much more these days. It makes it super fun. So I know that's something I'll definitely be trying to use more.
Great. We have some more questions. And so generally speaking, how do you approach dealing with a significant gap in employment in an interview? If the interviewer asks about that, we've gotten several questions about this. Sarah, how would you address that?
So if you look on my LinkedIn profile, I have a year of international traveling on there. So I call it out. I basically say, hey, I was traveling for seven countries and this is something that I just took time to do. If you just say it happens, this is my situation. I'm not gonna hide it. It is what it is. And if you do have maybe some consultancies, projects that you worked on, put them on there. If you volunteered and you were chair of, some networking thing, in my case, I did the New York Energy Week a few times, put that on there. Anything is important. So, don't hide away from the fact that you have a gap on your resume. Maybe you were a mother, you had a baby. Great. Own it, celebrate it. I was a mom. I learned a few things here and there, and now I'm hoping to get back in the workforce. So people shouldn't be judging you because you have a gap. Too bad on them. Say, well, I had fun swimming with a shark. What about you?
Yeah, great advice. And follow up to that, how do you grow professionally during that employment gap? Like, what are things you can do to make sure you're ready for the next role and to keep growing during that time?
Yeah, certifications, things that are out there that could continue to, hone your skill set. Volunteering, consulting, there's lots of different things you can do. Trying your luck on, writing, putting things out there. I mean, there's lots of opportunities to become authors now, more so than ever before. So maybe put a pen to the paper and decide to write a book. And now all of a sudden you're an author. So there's lots of skills you can continue to hone. This is partly why we have this period, right, of job search mode, and you put yourself to work. I want to see what I'm made of. What can I explore? What, skill sets I can discover. And maybe you start to learn a thing or two as you're talking to people in your informational interviews. They give you ideas too. Oh, wow, I didn't think about that. You would invite me to this conference, I'm absolutely going to go. Can I volunteer? Can I, be behind the scenes? And then you could say, yeah, I got now that event marketing skill there. You never know what door is going to open if you don't talk to people and start getting out there and understanding what's out, what abilities are there for capabilities are there for you.
Such great advice. Thank you, Sarah. We have a question here from like a recent grad. So not necessarily about, being laid off, but someone who's been struggling to find a job. Any advice on trying to reframe your thoughts about feeling left behind compared to your peers and feeling that you're not doing enough because it is such a tough job market right now?
I think immediately to Gary Vaynerchuk on Instagram. I love what he says. He, I think, started making his first bit of content in his mid-30s. He was working at a wine store for his dad in New Jersey for so long. He was not a good student at all. And now look where he is, right? He's got millions of followers all over various social media. He's an investor in different companies. He's a motivational speaker. He has his company he started. He says that it's not a timeline. Everyone has their own timelines. You can't compare yourself to somebody else. He's killing it now in his 50s and however old he is now. But if you look at him and Gary Vaynerchuk at age 30, he felt he was way behind the curve with his peers. So this is something I learned now as Sarah today, as opposed to Sarah in her 20s. It doesn't matter. You're your own competition. That's it. Who cares about everybody else?
Totally. And just to add on to that, there was another question that's similar, like how do you deal with the guilt of taking time off to travel instead of applying to jobs? And like, Sarah said that she spent a year traveling. I spent a few months traveling in between jobs, and you can do both. I did both. I was immediately updating my resume and applying for jobs. And like you said, everyone is doing virtual and remote work these days. So you can be wherever and apply to jobs. So take that trip, but also, yeah, you can interview from Asia and Europe. You can do all of it. And that's what I did. So, and within a few months, I was able to find a new job. So
Yeah.
definitely take that trip. Yeah.
And if you put that flag in the sand, I remember I got the job offer and I'm like, I'm already going to the Galapagos. Sorry, can I start next week then? And they're like, okay, because I already made the commitment. So you got to help work with me. Again, this is the mindset, right? The company thinks it could control everything about you. And you're like, no, I have boundaries too, right? And so that's by in your job search mode, again, who am I? What do I want? Let the world work around me. That puts you in a situation where you're like, no, this is what I want. This is what's going to work for me. Thank you. And I think we're in that age these days. We're seeing it more and more in corporate America and like.
Yes,
Definitely.
I also did the exact same thing. I was recruiting and a job said, well, we need you to start at this time. And I was like, well, I already booked a trip, like I'm visiting my family. And I ended up not getting that job and getting a job that did accommodate for my schedule. And they're like, you can start whenever. And so you will get the right opportunity. So yeah, take that time for yourself, book that trip, and you'll find a job that works with you.
Yes, thank you both. So much good advice. And we are now at the end of our Q&A, and I just want to give a big thank you to Sarah for her amazing presentation. And thank you all for joining us today. It was so amazing, like such good energy and vibes. I feel very inspired, so I hope you all feel very inspired to crush your job search and whatever you have in store next. As a reminder, we will be sending out a recording of this presentation to all attendees. And now Nicole from Alumni Affairs is going to give a few updates.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. This has been an incredible hour. I appreciate you sharing yourselves with all of us. And we just want to let you know that we have a few upcoming programs if you want to continue your learning through Cornell. So the ILR Alumni Association, let me find the link while I'm doing this, is going to be hosting a webinar on Layoffs 101 and employment agreements. It'll be on April 9th, and this will be from 3 lawyers, very much the ILR version of what you've heard today. And so you can continue your learning. I'll put that in the chat. Want to plug one more time Emboldened Ventures and Sisters Who Watch. So grateful. I don't know if any of you saw, I said as an elder millennial, the only way I know what's cool in the world right now is by listening to Laura and Shelby tell me about what they're doing. And certainly a lot of great content from Emboldened. We will send out links, we will send out the recording, and then the last piece, I will leave you with our alumni career support website, where you can get more resources, learn more, and reach out if there's any way we can help you on your journey. Thank you all. Thank you to our presenters, moderators, and have a wonderful day.
Bye. Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.